This is The Shining, and this is The Shinning. Same hotel, same madness, same psychic kid, except Homer snaps because Mr. Burns cut off the beer and the cable TV. That's one parody out of over 100. Treehouse of Horror has been pulling from horror classics, sci-fi, and thrillers since 1990, and most people have never actually seen the films being parodied. So today, we're starting from the very beginning and putting every single one next to the original. The very first Treehouse of Horror aired in 1990, and if you've never gone back and watched the movies it was pulling from, you're missing how ambitious this episode actually was. The writers didn't ease into it. They went after some of the biggest names in horror right out of the gate and packed 3 parodies into a single episode. First up, Bad Dream House. The Simpsons move into a new home and immediately things go wrong. Walls bleed, objects fly across the room. A deep voice tells them to get out. If that sounds familiar, it should, because the writers were pulling from at least 2 major films at once. The Amityville Horror came out in '79. A family moves into a house on Long Island where a mass murder had taken place, and the most famous moment in the entire film is the house itself growling, "Get out," at a visiting priest. The Simpsons kept that beat almost exactly. Same threatening voice, same command, but the exterior is where it gets specific. The design of the house in Bad Dream House matches the Amityville house. Then there's the Indian burial ground reveal, which comes straight from Poltergeist. In Spielberg's '82 film, the Freeling family discovers their housing development was built on relocated graves. The developer moved the headstones but left the bodies. The Simpsons played the same card. Lisa discovers the burial ground, but where Poltergeist turned that into genuine terror, the Simpsons turned it into the best punchline of the segment. The house would rather destroy itself than live with this family. Next, Hungry Are the Damned. Kang and Kodo show up for the very first time, abduct the family, and start feeding them ridiculous amounts of food. Lisa gets suspicious and finds a book on the alien ship titled How to Cook Humans. If you've seen the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man, you already know where this is going. To Serve Man aired in '62. Aliens land on Earth, solve hunger, cure disease, and invite humans aboard their ships. A translator discovers the aliens' guidebook is actually called To Serve Man and realizes too late that it's a cookbook. That twist became one of the most referenced endings in TV history. The Simpsons kept the same skeleton: suspicious hospitality, a damning book title, a slow reveal. But then they flipped the entire thing. Kang blows the dust off, and the full title reads, How to Cook for 40 Humans. The aliens were genuinely being generous. The family was wrong. That's a parody that understood the original well enough to reverse its most famous beat and make the joke land even harder. And then there's The Raven. This one stands apart because it's not a movie parody at all. It's a straight adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's poem from 1845, narrated by James Earl Jones, with Homer as the grief-stricken narrator and Bart as the Raven. No added jokes, no twist. The writers played it completely straight, which for season 2 of The Simpsons was a wild swing. But Treehouse of Horror 2 was about to raise the bar, because now the writers had proven the format worked, and they started reaching for bigger targets. Treehouse of Horror 2 came a year later, and the writers started pulling from deeper cuts. The monkey's paw kicks off the episode. The Simpsons are on holiday in Morocco, and Homer buys a monkey's paw from a street vendor that grants 4 wishes. Maggie gets a new pacifier. Bart wishes for the family to be rich and famous, and they do become famous until the entire world gets sick of them. Lisa wishes for world peace, and every country on Earth disarms, which is exactly when Kang and Kodo show up with a slingshot and a club and take over the planet. Homer uses the final wish on a turkey sandwich. The turkey's a little dry. The source material is William Wymark Jacobs' short story from 1902. A couple receives a monkey's paw that grants 3 wishes. They wish for money, and their son dies in a factory accident. The compensation is the exact amount they wished for. They wish him back, and something comes knocking at the door. They use the 3rd wish to send it away before they see what came back. The original is pure dread. Every wish makes things worse in a way you can't undo. The Simpsons kept that exact mechanic. Every wish backfires, but cranked the absurdity so high that the horror becomes comedy. Lisa accidentally causes an alien invasion by wishing for peace. Homer's biggest regret is dry turkey. And then Ned Flanders picks up the paw and wishes for nothing but good things. And it works perfectly. Very on brand. Next, the Bart Zone. Bart has godlike powers. He can read minds, reshape reality, and turn anyone who annoys him into something horrible. The entire town lives in fear of him. This comes from the Twilight Zone episode, It's a Good Life, which aired in '61. A 6-year-old boy named Anthony Fremont has the power to alter reality, and he's trapped his small town in total isolation. Everyone around him has to smile and agree with everything he does, because the moment he senses a negative thought, he removes that person from existence. The episode ends with no resolution. Anthony is still in control and no one can stop him. The Simpsons kept the setup: omnipotent child, terrified community, but gave it an ending. The original never did. Homer confronts Bart, and the two actually bond. The original wanted you to feel trapped with no way out. The Simpsons gave a kid with godlike power the one thing he actually wanted: his dad paying attention to him. And there's a neat real real-world detail here too. Nancy Cartwright, who voices Bart, actually appeared in the 1983 Twilight Zone movie, which remade that exact same story. So Bart's voice actress had already lived inside this parody once before. Last segment, If I Only Had a Brain. Mr. Burns wants to build the perfect worker, a tireless, obedient robot. He needs a human brain to power it, and they grab Homer's. The robot gets Homer's brain implanted, and immediately all it wants to do is sleep and eat donuts. The source is Frankenstein, both Mary Shelley's novel and the 31 film. A scientist assembles a creature from dead body parts, powers it with electricity, and watches it come to life with an abnormal brain. Burns fills the same role as Dr. Frankenstein, obsessive, controlling, convinced he can build the perfect creation. And just like the original, the creation immediately turns on him. Except Homer's version of rebellion is napping on the job, but Treehouse of Horror 3 went bigger. Treehouse of Horror 3 aired in '92, and this is where the parodies started hitting different. The writers went after 3 of the most recognizable monster and horror movies ever made, and nailed all 3. If you want to catch every part of this series as it comes out, hit subscribe. We're going through every Treehouse of Horror parody, from the first episode to the most recent. So, Clown Without Pity. Homer forgets Bart's birthday, and panic buys a Krusty the Clown doll from a sketchy shop downtown. The shopkeeper warns him the doll is cursed. Homer takes it anyway, and within hours, the doll is trying to kill him. This pulls from 2 sources at once. Child's Play came out in '88. A serial killer uses voodoo to transfer his soul into a good guy doll named Chucky, and the doll spends the rest of the film trying to murder a kid's family. But there's also the Twilight Zone episode, Living Doll from '63, where Telly Savalas goes to war with his stepdaughter's talking doll, Talkie Tina, who keeps whispering, "I'm going to kill you." The Simpsons combined both. A cursed doll that actively tries to murder someone, that's Chucky. A talking doll that terrorizes one specific adult in the household, that's Talkie Tina. But the payoff is pure Simpsons. Marge calls a customer service hotline, and the technician finds a switch on the back of the doll set to evil. He flips it to good, and the doll becomes Homer's personal servant. Problem solved. Next, King Homer. Marge joins Mr. Burns on an expedition to Ape Island, where they discover a giant Homer living in the jungle. They capture him, bring him back to Broadway, and he breaks loose. This is King Kong, 1933. A film crew sails to Skull Island, captures a massive ape, brings him to New York City, and he escapes and climbs the Empire State Building with the leading lady in his hand. The Simpsons followed that blueprint almost beat for beat. The expedition, the capture, the big city debut, the escape. But where Kong scaled the Empire State Building in one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history, Homer barely makes it up 2 stories before running out of breath and just marries Marge on the sidewalk instead. And finally, Dial Z for zombies. Bart finds a book of black magic in the school library, tries to bring back the family cat, and accidentally raises every dead person in Springfield. Zombies flood the streets. Homer grabs a shotgun, and at one point he blasts Ned Flanders.
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders.
He was a zombie?
The source is Night of the Living Dead, George Romero's '68 film that basically invented the modern zombie movie. A group of strangers barricade themselves inside a farmhouse while the dead rise and surround them. Romero played it completely straight. The film ends with the last survivor being mistaken for a zombie and shot by a rescue party. The Simpsons kept the siege. Zombies closing in, survivors fighting back, but turned Homer into the action hero nobody asked for. And where Romero ended on tragedy, The Simpsons ended on Bart finding a spell that sends every zombie back underground. Family goes home like nothing happened. But Treehouse of Horror 4 went even darker. Treehouse of Horror 4 had a framing device. The segments were presented as paintings in a haunted gallery, like Night Gallery, but the parodies inside were the real draw. The Devil and Homer Simpson opens with Homer selling his soul for a donut. The buyer is the devil, who turns out to be Ned Flanders. When Homer eats the last bite, the devil comes to collect, but Lisa demands a fair trial. Lionel Hutz represents Homer. The jury is stacked with history's greatest villains, and the whole thing plays out like a courtroom drama in hell. The source is The Devil and Daniel Webster, a 1941 film based on Stephen Vincent Benet's short story. A desperate farmer sells his soul to the devil for prosperity, and when the devil comes to collect, legendary orator Daniel Webster argues the case in a midnight trial with a jury of the damned. Webster wins through sheer rhetorical brilliance. The Simpsons kept the trial structure and the jury of the damned, but swapped Webster's eloquence for Lionel Hutz's total incompetence. The resolution comes down to a technicality. Marge produces their wedding photo with a message on the back where Homer had pledged his soul to her. The devil loses because of a wedding photo. Next, terror at 5.5 feet. Bart looks out the window of the school bus and sees a gremlin ripping it apart. He tries to warn everyone. Nobody believes him. The more he panics, the crazier he looks. This comes from one of the most famous Twilight Zone episodes ever made, Nightmare at 20,000 Feet from '63. William Shatner plays a man on an airplane who sees a creature on the wing tearing the engine apart. He tries to alert the passengers, but every time someone else looks, the creature disappears. The episode ends with Shatner being carried off on a stretcher, but the camera pans to the shredded engine, confirming he was right the whole time. The Simpsons moved it from a plane to a school bus, swapped Shatner for Bart, and kept the exact same tension. One person sees the truth, nobody believes him. At one point, Bart tries to get Otto to look at the gremlin. Otto spots Hans Moleman driving alongside them instead, swerves into him, and sends Hans crashing into a tree. Car explodes. Nobody ever sees the actual gremlin. And the last segment, Bart Simpson's Dracula. Mr. Burns invites the family to his castle in Pennsylvania. Burns is a vampire in every possible way, and nobody in the family seems to notice or care. Bart gets bitten in turn. Lisa tries to convince everyone. The family eventually stakes Burns, thinking that'll fix it, but the final shot reveals Marge was the head vampire the whole time. This pulls from Bram Stoker's Dracula, Francis Ford Coppola's '92 film. The gothic atmosphere, the castle invitation, the slow spread of vampirism through a group, all of it tracks back to Coppola's version, but the real joke is the family's total obliviousness. Burns could not be more obviously a vampire, and Homer still can't see it, but Treehouse of Horror 5 had the one parody that most fans consider the best segment ever made, the shinning. This is the one everybody remembers. The Simpsons are hired as winter caretakers of Mr. Burns' lodge. Burns cuts off the beer supply and the cable TV to keep Homer focused on work, and within hours, Homer is dragging an axe through the hallways. The Shining came out in 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Jack Torrance takes his family to the Overlook Hotel for a winter caretaker job. The hotel has a history. The previous caretaker murdered his entire family. Over the course of months, Jack unravels. He sits at a typewriter and fills pages with "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." The axe comes out. His son Danny has a psychic gift called The Shining that lets him sense the danger coming. And Dick Halloran, the hotel cook who shares Danny's ability, drives through a blizzard to save them and gets killed the moment he walks through the door. The Simpsons rebuilt almost the entire film. Bart has The Shinning. Groundskeeper Willie tells him to never call it The Shining if they don't want to get sued. Homer covers a wall with "No TV and no beer make Homer go crazy" instead of Kubrick's typewriter pages. He axes through a door, and Willie fills the Halloran role, rushes in to save the family, and takes an axe straight to the back. That became a running gag. Willie gets axed in the back in all three segments of this episode, but where Kubrick's film ends with Jack freezing to death in the hedge maze, the Simpsons version ends with Homer finding a portable TV half buried in the snow. He sits down, the family joins him, and they freeze together, watching television. The horror stops the second Homer gets what he wanted. Time and punishment comes next. Homer sticks his hand in a broken toaster and accidentally sends himself back to the age of the dinosaurs. He remembers the one rule of time travel: don't touch anything, and immediately sits on a fish and clubs a mosquito. On a later trip back, he sneezes directly onto a T-Rex. The cold spreads through every dinosaur in the area and wipes them all out. Every time he returns to the present, the world has changed. Ned Flanders is the supreme overlord of Earth in one version. Donuts rain from the sky in another. The source is Ray Bradbury's short story, A Sound of Thunder from '52. A man pays to travel back in time on a guided dinosaur hunt. He's told to stay on a floating path and never disturb anything from the past. He panics, steps off the path, and crushes a single butterfly. When he returns, the entire world is different. The language has changed. A different president won the election. One butterfly rewrote history. The Simpsons took Bradbury's core idea and ran it through Homer's complete inability to follow instructions. Every trip back makes things worse, and the version he finally settles for, where everything looks normal but the family eats with lizard tongues, Homer just shrugs and says, "Close enough." And the final segment, Nightmare Cafeteria. Springfield Elementary has two problems at the same time: overcrowded detention and no lunch meat. Principal Skinner finds a solution to both. The teachers start eating the students. This pulls from Soylent Green, the '73 film set in a dystopian future, where a detective discovers that the world's most popular food product is made from human remains. The Simpsons skip the mystery entirely. The teachers are just openly eating children, and nobody stops them until it's too late. That covers Treehouse of Horror 1 through 5. 15 movie parodies, and we're barely scratching the surface. There are over 30 of these episodes, and the movies the writers went after only get crazier from here. Part 2 is coming soon. If you don't want to miss it, hit subscribe. We're trying to hit 100,000 by the end of this year, and every single one helps.